Hi there, friends. I'm trying something a little new in my setup today, so things may seem a little wonky. Although if this doesn't work, you'll never actually know I did it. I have a couple new decks I just wanted to share with you and give my thoughts on. I also wanted to thank wonderful Tarotness for sending me this great book. I'm excited to look at it, so thank you. She's on Instagram and YouTube. If you don't follow her, you should. So, thank you for that. Little shout out there. So, I have 3 decks that just joined my collection this week, and I thought it would be interesting just to share my thoughts. Nothing here has never been seen before, but I thought it would still be interesting to look at. So, let's look at the one that everyone's sort of talking about right now, which is the Santa Muerte Tarot. I know we have some bitterness over the pre-order. Now, I did not pre-order this deck. But I know that people out there did, and they got them canceled, and it was really sort of an odd situation. I've never actually heard of a special or limited edition being sold that broadly that way, which is interesting. But if you're experiencing bitterness over it, and you didn't get the coffin box, I have to tell you, this one's really nice. I really like it, and it's a little more practical in terms of a piece of packaging, because it could sit on the shelf a little bit more nicely, or if you really want to take it somewhere, you could throw it in a bag. So I think that in terms of packaging, it's actually really well done for a mass market deck. So I don't know that I would have preferred the coffin version of it. I didn't want this deck actually until I saw Kelly from the Truth and Stories walkthrough of it. And I thought, oh, gosh, this is interesting. And it just sort of took my breath away in a really interesting way. So, I went and ordered it, and I'm glad I did. I really like it. Now, I have not shuffled this, so this came in earlier, and I'm sort of you know I sorry, whoops. I've been sort of anxiously waiting to shuffle this. It is pretty glossy, I will say. So the cards are slippery, but it's not, it's not bad stock. It's pretty just, it's normal tarot card stock. I'll just sort of look through a couple of these and talk about why I like it. First of all, the art I think is really striking. I mean, there's just a beauty to these images that's kind of breathtaking. This one sits like that together, and it's just, this isn't a style of art that I would normally like be drawn to, because if you watch my channel, you know that I like to see the sort of hand of the artist at work, and this is such a, I think this must be digital, but it has like a real painterly quality to it, and just like a real beauty about it. There's just like a really nice flow, a really nice energy to the cards themselves. I really like this hermit. I don't know that I would want to be this hermit, but I like it. So, I had not heard much about this deck. I know people were waiting for it. This is the Santa Muerte card, which is the cover of the box, but this stands in place for death. I've like a lot of people sort of been charmed, which is really an odd thing, by the sort of rise of like sugar skulls and such in our culture. That I think one of the nice things about the mixing and the sort of wonderfulness of like the culture collisions, the culture, you know deliciousness of this country, is that we start to get things that come from other places that we hadn't really used or had in our history. So I like that this is influenced by a Latinx culture, and I like that it's beautiful art, and I like that there's just something sort of like joyful about these cards, given that what we're talking about is Santa Muerte, which is Book of the Dead. I think we have a very strange relationship, and I'm absolutely guilty of this in this country. But I'm guilty of this too, which is like we're so far from the idea of physical loss, and there's so much we can do to prevent it. I haven't really talked about this much, but my grandfather died last week, early last week, and it was expected. He had been living with dementia for a long time, but the process of the funeral and the wake and all of that was really just a reminder of how much I don't want that. When it's my turn, I want more something like this. I want there to be joy somehow. I mean, you miss people and when you lose them, but I think there's something about cultures that have a connection to death that's a bit more natural and a bit more cyclical, and there's just I think there are two things that we in the United States in particular do badly. Well, there's a lot of things we do badly, I guess, but in terms of like life events, I think sex and death are two things we have really fucked up relationships with here. So I like this energy because it's saying, party now, because you don't know what comes after. So anyway, I like the energy of this deck. It's got a joy, it's got a beauty of color and a richness of color. But what I like in particular are the minors, which is, Kelly pointed this out. I almost didn't even watch the second half of the video because I thought, oh, those majors are pretty. Maybe I'll get it one day. And then I watched further into the review and I said, oh, these minors are really kind of breathtaking. Now, the Suit of Cups is not dramatically different from Rider-Waite-Smith for the most part, although you get cards like this that are. And just sort of amazing. But where this deck really excels, I think, is in the suits. The Suit of Cups is okay. Of the three, I think it's the least kind of like, wow. It's still good, you know what I mean? But so I'm just flipping through. This is the Page of Cups. I really like the chords. There's sort of a great energy about the chords. But in the suits of Pentacles and Swords and Wands, there are some really surprising moments. For example, this one, which is the Three of Pentacles. And, three, if you have sort of any relationship to numerology, often three is growth. It is in the system that I've kind of developed for myself. So it's just, I mean, here we have someone watering, and it's just perfect. And four is stability and foundation, and we've got someone sort of being placed in front of a bank for the Four of Pentacles, so we've got sort of a financial stability. So I just think that there's a nice connection, to the elements and the numerology that are sometimes associated with the cards that I think is really successful. So I won't walk through the whole deck. There are walkthroughs out there, and if you want me to do one, I certainly can. But I think this is really successful. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle in the comments on Kelly's video, not related to Kelly. I want to shuffle this to see how it shuffles. But someone said, I don't understand why anyone would bring this energy into their house. And while I certainly respect that, for me, the energy of this deck is pure carpe diem. The shuffle's really nice. You know what I mean? It's got that sense of like, now's the time, y'all. And I think that that's really a beautiful thing to remember. It's just, I think there's like a healthiness to considering this stuff. I've if you watch my videos way back, into the beginning of this year, I think. I talk a little bit about how the death card in the Wild Unknown really sort of transformed the way that I think about that card, because it shows kind of a carcass of a bird, and it's decaying into the ground, and it sort of awakened me to the idea of how everything comes out of the remains, or the earth, or the fertilized ground of what came before it. And our lives are like that. I think there's a reason why the death card comes in the middle of the majors, because everything that comes after it only comes after it because the ground has been fertilized by all the things before it that have died. And you know what I mean? Like, all the things in the past fertilize the earth for everything that comes before it. So, there's an interesting thing we've done to the death card in tarot, which has made it about transformation. Yes, I agree with that, and I interpret it that way. But what the Wild Unknown death card showed me was that it's even more than that. It's about letting things end and die and decay so that they can fertilize the ground for the next step. And that little chunk of the trumps, from the Hanged Man to Death to Temperance, then the Devil and the Tower. We've got this very sort of like middle of the deck that's sort of like, the Hanged Man, of course, we look at as different points of view, but I also look at that as consequences. There's also that shamanic aspect of the Hanged Man where you suffer something. Shamans frequently had to endure a suffering in order to reach sort of a transcendent state. So they had to die, in many ways, send themselves to the edge of physical death and come back. So there's that aspect of it. But it's like the death comes, and then in the Temperance, the earth is watered. So in the death, we get the decaying and the fertilization of the ground. And then Temperance comes along and waters that. And in the Devil, we get this sort of heat of the seed. It takes heat and water to make a seed grow. And then in the Tower, you get this eruption. But we think of that often as a negative thing or as a disruptive thing, but it's in some ways like the seed bursting through the earth. Which is why there's a very sexual aspect to me about the sort of section of cards from the Hanged Man to Death to Temperance to Devil to Tower. All of those there's like a sexual energy to that, and it makes sense when I have started to think about it this way, because there is like a fertilization and a watering and a bursting through. So anyway. So I think that this is not negative energy in this deck. I think this is actually really kind of beautiful and wonderful. So I have not remotely started to work with this yet, because I waited to shuffle it so that I could do that for you on camera, and we'll show it in order. But I'm still zoomed in. But it looks I think really great. So that's that. So if you've been on the fence about this one, or you've been feeling bitter about this situation with the shipping, I say, and what I say goes, I say that you should give it a try. It's a little more expensive, I think, than a mass market deck should be, but I do think that it's less expensive than an indie deck would be, and this is packaged very much like a good indie deck, so I think in that regards this is a success. Let me move on to something that's a little bit more of a curiosity right now, which is the Hermes playing cards. So I discovered these. Where did I discover these? I think it was Elle from Sacred Seeds channel. Might have been. Anyway, these are. Oh, excuse my reach. These are a set of playing cards by Robert M. Place. I damaged the box a little opening it, and not even opening it the first time, it was opening it the second time. It comes with this great seal, can you see that, of Hermes. you have to break it in order to open the deck, which is why I ripped the box a little bit, because I was trying not to damage the sticker, other than slicing through it very carefully with a not knife, but I ended up damaging the box in the process. So what this is very much like the maybe Lenormand, actually. So this is a 52 card deck for readings and gameplay. Why this reminds me of the Maybe Lenormand is that the Maybe Lenormand also has 52 cards, very similar in size. And what Ryan Edwards did was he added the additional cards that are missing from the Lenormand and the 52, and he put sort of cartomantic associations with them, that you could use as, like, the pig is one, you could use as a Lenormand deck by taking those out. Let me move that over. Or you could leave them in and have, like, a different cartomantic experience. So there's one, there's another. So I actually, that I've had sort of difficulties with Lenormand. This is one of the decks that I use because it has more cards than that. So Robert M. Place's deck is actually very similar. I think a lot of the correspondences are similar, and the additional cards are similar. So you've got two jokers, a male and a female joker, which you can use to be the significator, the significator's partner in same-sex couples. And then you've got basically the playing card deck with the Lenormand associations, but the focus, on a Lenormand card is the symbol of, like, the ring or the fish or the book. What Robert M. Place did was he sort of put the focus back on the card with sort of an indication of the Lenormand association or the cartomantic association. So here you see the king with the fish and the queen with the paths, the jack of diamonds with the scythe, and then for the actual pips themselves, the playing card is there with just, like, the kiss of the Lenormand or the cartomantic. So there's the book, there's the coffin, there's the key, you've got the birds, the clover, so there's an additional one, there's the pig. So Fortuna, a horseshoe, and there's a little book. It's not very. I mean, it's really a little white book, but it's got a lot in it, and probably all you would need to use it. The sun, the clouds, but you can see the focus is more on the playing card than on the symbol, but they're there, and so it's just, it's similar to the Maybe Lenormand in terms of style, and in terms of meanings. There's your mice, there's your mountain. But across, now here you get the additional one. So it's the 5, 4, 3, and 2 that you get that has additional meaning. So lightning, the eye, and then everything else is Lenormand. And the card associations are the same. So I haven't shuffled this one either. I've been waiting on this one too. It is really nice sort of card. I'm going to shuffle it right now. Yeah, I mean, it's really nice stock. I think it's like glossy and coated, but this is the kind of deck where I think that everything's so sort of bold and striking. You don't really need it to be matte. Yeah, I haven't again used this yet. I kept it in order so I could do this video. And I think that this is going to be an interesting one to play with. Zoom out and just sort of lay out a few. Now, he actually has a grand tableau in this little white book that involves all 52, and I think it's 6 rows of 9. I clearly cannot do that on this little space, but so I just want to lay out a couple and see how it looks. So I did shuffle in the extra joker, the jokers, but you know, you can see it's a Lenormand reader may not like instantly say, oh, this is a deck that I want, because the focus is more on the playing card than on the image. So you do have to look a little more closely to see what you're looking at. But I think that those who are like a little more experimental in their technique may find this. So this is available from his website. And it's not super expensive. And it's really nice. It came really fast. I ordered it last week, I think on Friday, and it arrived on Monday, so can't beat it. The last one, again, nothing revolutionary, nothing new, but it's something that I've known about and haven't sort of bothered with, and suddenly did. So this is the Rackham Oracle. And I was happy to see that it came in a box. I don't know that I've seen walkthroughs of this deck where the box was part of it. I don't know if that's just because they weren't pictured or what, but it came with one, so that was good. I picked, honestly, I didn't think too much about the back. I picked the one that seems like the most sort of lovely to me. This one I have shuffled, but there's actually no order to it, so it doesn't matter much. I did not shuffle the significator, so there's a male and female significator. Sorry. Whoops, it's a very slippery deck. It shuffles really well because this is a deck that's made to be shuffled. I mean, it's playing card stock, and as such, it shuffles like that. So it's kind of a dream to shuffle. And it's I have glare just because of the lighting in here, but it's not like a super glossy deck. So there's a male and a female significator, and then there's just 78 cards that are not tarot and they're not Lenormand, although they're similar. I got this one mostly because what I've discovered, I have a couple Oracle decks, and I never really knew what to do with them. But one of the things that I found in the last few weeks, and literally just the last few weeks, is that what Oracle decks are useful for, from my point of view, is for general readings. So if someone asks for a reading and they don't have a particular question, I like the idea of drawing an Oracle card to give me direction for the reading. So for example, if I were to, shuffle this deck and pull guidance, then I would say, okay, let's do a tarot reading about guidance for you. So it's just sort of a sense of using the Oracle cards as like a prompt for the reading. If you've ever taken a writing workshop, you get writing prompts. So it's like a tarot prompt. So I've been using the Halloween Oracle for that this month, and I'm looking for other balanced Oracle decks that would be nice for that. And I'm having a hard time finding any, just because a lot of them seem to be very sort of like affirmational, which is great, but it's not like a good prompt. This one, in the walkthroughs I watched of it, people sort of talked about how balanced it was in terms, and just sort of looking through it, I can see that. I can also see doing a reading with this. I haven't tried that yet, but I might. Yeah, I mean, there's walkthroughs of this. So this is my first experience with Duck Soup, and I do like this deck quite a bit. The art is repurposed, of course. So if you've heard of this deck, you've likely known that this is, there's an artist's card here that talks about who Arthur Rackham was and when he lived. There's also a little card that explores how to use it for divination. I think that, in fact, actually what sent me to the Duck Soup website wasn't even this. I didn't realize they were the publishers of it. They have a tarot deck that I've been sort of eyeing that's not out yet, called the Trick or Treat Tarot, and I was sort of hoping that was out. But then I realized this was them, and then I watched a couple reviews, and I said maybe I should get this one. In terms of an Oracle deck, this is not cheap. I mean, I think this is about $60, and that's the base price. Like, you can get different card stock that's smooth, which might actually be nice for this deck, but that'll cost you more. And there's actually now a larger edition. So I think it was Annika, nobody here, who mentioned it would be nice to get this in like a larger size, and so that's actually available now, but again, that costs. I do, in my way, have to comment on so after I ordered this, I went So the Trick or Treat deck isn't released yet, so I ordered this. And then I thought, oh, I really kind of, I haven't really looked at Duck Soup much. I should go and see what they have. And I was disappointed to discover they actually have an Oracle deck that I think is really problematic. Yeah. It features some old art. So the art at the time, was considered okay, and it's really not okay by today's standards. And I wish that, while I'm not a believer in like getting rid of art or books that are problematic but come from the past, I think it's actually important that we hold on to those so that we can actually avoid creating offensive stuff in the future, and sort of understand our path with bigotries, But I also feel like, while it's important not to destroy that so we can see who we were and what we came from, I feel like it's also important not to repackage that stuff in like a modern playful way and say, oh, you could do some fortune telling with this kind of racist old art. That's problematic. So I don't know. I've actually gone back and forth on whether to write to them about it and say, look, they have a little disclaimer that says, oh, this isn't meant to be offensive. But that, to me, is even more problematic, because it recognizes that it could offend somebody and you're doing it anyway. I know that there are people out there who watch these videos and get frustrated when I say things like that, but, I feel like it's, as like a white guy in the world, it's my job to point that stuff out. It's not the job of the people who are going to be insulted by it, It's my job to point out sexism, it's my job to report sexual harassment, and it's my job to say, look, it's not okay to repurpose racist art and make an Oracle deck out of it. So I probably will write to them. I don't know. It's very complicated, because I don't want to be viewed as a crank, but I do want to... as a gay man, I've talked about this before, I've faced my own bigotries in life. I'm a person who knows what it's like to get beaten up for being an effeminate kid. I don't want others to live in a world where they feel unsafe. And, it's one thing to look at a tarot deck that's full of white people and to I think, have the experience that a lot of people have, which is like, oh, there's another thing I'm excluded from. But to have art that depicts me or anyone as sort of a disgusting stereotype is actively offensive. And it makes me not want to give more money to this company. So maybe I've made up my mind and I should just write a diplomatic note and see what happens. Anyway, I feel like these things are important to say. And that's, you know what? I know that they're important to say, and I'm apologizing for that, and I'm not going to apologize for it. If you disagree with me, that's a problem. So there. I mean, that's that. This is the world we live in. So anyway, this deck I really do like, and whether or not I give more money to this company, I did give money to this one, and for this, and I do like it, and will probably work with it. The art from this comes from Arthur Rackham's illustrations for a series of this Grimm's Fairy Tales. There's a Midsummer Night's Dream, and then there's an Ibsen play. Ibsen wrote A Doll's House, which he's most famous for. He also wrote Hedda Gabler, which is... So these are two incredible plays if you're remotely interested in theater. A Doll's House was kind of the first play that's viewed as a feminist play today, and Ibsen said it wasn't one because he didn't know what that meant. But essentially, it's the play that the ending of it was so controversial because a woman leaves her husband, and at the time that was astonishing. And Hedda Gabler is an interesting play because, well, I don't want to spoil all the details, but anyway, again, Ibsen wrote really interesting women. But before he wrote those interesting women, he wrote this really long, discursive, rambling, picaresque, is really what it's called, sort of odyssey about a young man named Peer Gynt, And that pronunciation is like an Americanized pronunciation. That's not how it's pronounced, I think, in Norwegian, which is what Ibsen was, if I'm right about that. But it's sort of not unlike a Shakespeare play. It's kind of a ramble through a young man's experiences. So it's got in common with the Odyssey, and the Iliad, and other sort of like hero's journey stories, coming of age stories. But it's very fantastical. There's trolls and witches, and if you know the Voltaire book Candide, or the Leonard Bernstein musical based on it, it's similar in that way too. It's about a young man sort of going off into the world and having all these strange experiences. So anyway, that's Peer Gynt, and so I'm interested actually to see which. I wonder if there's a way to figure out which cards in this deck are from Peer Gynt, because I'd like to know, but I don't. Anyway, speaking of rambling and discursive, here's normal for me. So anyway, so those are some decks that I've gotten in my collection and that I have been working with, or I'm about to work with, and that I wanted to share my thoughts on. And once again, to cry into the wilderness my thoughts on just being a good steward of each other, being a good neighbor. I think what we do is an empathetic art, and I think it's worth being empathetic to others. And I think those of us who are privileged for whatever reason have the responsibility to point out when there's something that's not right. And I'm going to keep doing that. So be good, and I'll talk to you soon.